It's early August in northeast Latvia. These wild lands are covered with vast forests, representing an ideal habitat for Nathusius'S pipistrelle. Particularly discreet, this small creature usually lives inside of hollow trees. But the region's many wooden buildings are another perfect fit. The 230-year-old wooden church of Ebro is home to one of the largest Nathusius'S pipistrelle colonies in Europe. It is just before dusk, and all is still calm, because bats are nocturnal creatures. They slept all day in one of the many hiding places within the building's wooden frame. But as soon as night falls, the colony comes to life. 300 adult females and their offspring spread their wings before the night's first outing. Strangely, the colony doesn't include a single adult male. It's now midsummer, and almost all of the juvenile bats have learned to fly. Ready for takeoff, they await their mother's signals. As soon as it's dark, the females take flight, followed closely by their young. First comes flying social hour, a dance that helps them warm up their wings. Then, they're off towards the forests and ponds, where they'll spend the night hunting insects, their favorite prey. Averaging around 8 grams in weight and a wingspan of 25 centimeters, Nathusius'S pipistrelle is one of the smallest bats in Europe. Its large, flexible ears give it exceptional hearing skills. How do these acrobats dart between the trees and manage to find their prey in total darkness? It's not thanks to their eyes. To orient themselves at night, Nathusius'S pipistrelles, along with other bats, use a special sense: echolocation. They produce high-pitched sounds from the mouth, which are inaudible to humans. These fast, highly directional ultrasounds bounce off the surrounding objects and back into the bat's ears as echoes. It is these echoes that allow the pipistrelle to construct a tri-dimensional representation of its surrounding environment. When it's hunting, the pipistrelle raises the frequency of its sonar emissions to obtain a more precise display of its prey, like this nocturnal insect. As night comes to a close, the satiated predators return to the safety of their shelters. The pipistrelles may be resting during the day, but they are not entirely inactive. Huddled together, mothers and their young reinforce their social connections, or use the time to care for their wings. A biologist from the University of Jelgava, Gunnars Petersons, and his students take an annual survey of the church's colony. Counting the colony members allows the scientists to compare the number of bats present before and after migration. The census takes place just before the bats' departure, using a strange device that makes their cries audible.
So ultrasound detector is equipment used by bat walkers. People, when they see bats, they don't hear anything. But actually they produce quite loud sounds all the time. It changes ultrasounds to audible. Fingers make no sound or a very, very weak sound, but if you now you get sound which is inaudible for us. Here is also ultrasound in such movement.
This evening, they recorded 285 pipistrelles.
We can do it.
For many students, this outing is the first time they actually come into contact with bats. These small, silky-coated creatures are much more endearing than the students expected. Come early August in Northern Europe, nature is still incredibly productive. So why do the pipistrelles migrate? In just a few weeks, temperatures in Latvia will begin to drop. In the middle of winter, they can get as low as -20 degrees. While most bats take shelter in caves where they hibernate to avoid freezing, Nathusius'S pipistrelle adopts an entirely different strategy. It chooses to migrate south, towards latitudes where it never freezes, even in the coldest months of winter. One night in August, upon nightfall, the pipistrelles leave the church tower a final time. The mothers and their young will be flying for a very long time. This mass migration takes place all over Northern Europe as Nathusius'S pipistrelles begin their migration across the continent. The church colony flies in total darkness towards the Baltic Sea. With an average of 100 kilometers per night, it will take them 4 days to reach the shoreline. Gunnar Petersens is already waiting for them. He joins a team of European scientists in the Compagne Nature Park, who have all come for the purpose of studying the bats' migration. A giant funnel-shaped net has been strung across the forest. At 15 meters high and 50 meters wide, this gigantic trap is one of the biggest bat capture nets ever built. Much like bird monitors, Gunnars wants to tag as many bats as possible with identification rings. But the number of catches will directly depend on the weather.
We are now in the middle of August, and it's more or less the peak of migration. This night the wind direction will change from western wind, what we have now, to southern wind or front wind for bats. And at such winds they tend to fly lower, and then we can capture them.
Everyone is on high alert. After days of waiting, the team of scientists can only hope tonight will bring a wave of migrating bats. During migration, the pipistrelles often fly over 20 meters in altitude. Only moderate headwinds will send the bats into the net. The pipistrelles are now migrating from forests all over the Latvian coast. Gliding along the canopy, they emit powerful ultrasounds, allowing them to visualize their surroundings despite the darkness. In Compagne, the ultrasound detectors begin to pick up signals. The first bats appear shortly after. With a few wing flaps, they fly to the back of the net. But their echolocation system quickly tells them that they've fallen into a trap. So they turn right back around. Luckily, volunteers are prepared to catch the bats as they retreat. The number of catches multiply, and the cages begin to fill with bats. The pipistrelles are quickly taken to Gunnar Petersen's, and he immediately begins the next step in the process.
I have one Nathusius'S bat, and quite calm animals, don't bite very much. Thanks to ringing, we know it's bat covering the longest migration flights, more than 2,000 kilometers from here to Spain.
Unlike with birds, rings for bats are not attached to their legs, but rather to the edge of their wings on their forearms. Each ring has a unique code. If a bat is recaptured elsewhere in Europe, the ring will help figure out the distance covered by the bat. In the past 30 years, Gunnars and his team have ringed tens of thousands of migrating pipistrelles. Unsurprisingly, this year's captures prove that male adults are rare during peak migration. The majority of the bats flying south are females or juveniles. After being ringed, the pipistrelles are immediately released. At sunrise, a new experiment is put into place. Jens Koblitz is a bioacoustician from the Max Planck Institute in Konstanz. Specialized in echolocation, he sets up an ultrasound recording device that will allow him to measure the bat's exact flying speed, as well as the type of echolocation they use during migration.
There are 8 microphones on this part and 8 more on the part over there. This high number of microphones allows us to precisely identify where the sound is coming from. We know the bats use echolocation to orient themselves in small spaces and to detect obstacles in their path. We also know they use echolocation for hunting. They emit sound at regular intervals. They go beep, beep, beep. And then, as they get close to their prey, they go beep, beep, zzz, and they usually catch their prey. But we don't really know how bats use echolocation when they undertake long-distance migrations, like when they migrate south for the winter.
Wind always favors migration. The sun has barely set, and the first bats are already flying over the 16 microphones.
Wow, that's crazy. Look at that. 5 at once. There's another. Wow.
Christian Voigt, a biologist from the Leibniz Institute for Wildlife Research, joins Jens. This eminent European expert on bats is trying to find a correlation between flight speed data and the animal's energy needs.
What we're really interested in is the bat's flight speed, how long it takes them to travel 2,000 kilometers, and understanding when they take breaks. In particular, I'm interested in learning what energy sources they use to power that. It's an incredible performance. Do they cover the entire 2,000-kilometer migration by burning fat or by metabolizing the energy directly from the prey they consume?
In just a few hours, the scientists' microphones record hundreds of passing pipistrelles. The following morning, they start analyzing the data they've collected.
Can you show me last night's data?
Our recordings show that the average speed was between 6 and 9 meters per second. That corresponds to about 20 to 25, or up to 30 kilometers per hour for bats flying through this part of Latvia.
Keep in mind that in the early evening, we recorded a few hunting flights.
In the early evening, we observed they were hunting for food. But in the middle of the night, only regular sound waves were recorded. That means they were no longer hunting. They were really flying to migrate.
So they hunt early in the evening, and then, at some point during the night, we believe they fly up to higher altitudes. And then from there, they fly nonstop for many kilometers.
Unlike migratory birds that spend several days rebuilding their fat reserves in between each leg of their journey, Nathusius pipistrelles prefer to feed just before every nocturnal flight. Why have they adopted such a different strategy? At the Can Move Institute in Sweden, one scientist is studying bat flight in an attempt to answer this very question. Shannon Curry is an animal psychology specialist at the Leibniz Institute in Berlin. She is studying the pipistrelle's metabolism in mid-flight.
This is our little Pipistrelle Nathusi. When they're sitting around resting and relaxing, their heart rate is around about 400 beats per minute. And then when they fly, it almost triples to over 1,000 beats per minute. The really tiny bats like these pipistrelles, they're shooting through the sky over 1,000 beats per minute in their heart. Their metabolism is 15 times what it is when they're resting. Everything is going crazy.
The experiment first measures the amount of carbon gas the pipistrelle exhales when at rest. This determines the amount of energy used when it's not flying. The bat is then placed in a machine that allows it to fly in place, a wind tunnel. This device allows the pipistrelle to truly show off the incredible gifts that nature has bestowed upon it. From an evolutionary standpoint, bats are truly phenomenal animals. They're the only mammals capable of flying. After 1 minute of flying, Shannon needs to quickly measure the amount of carbon dioxide the bat exhales after the effort. The results prove that the bat spends an enormous amount of energy to fly. Its flight uses more energy than a bird of the same weight. This could explain why the bats must feed before each flight. Luckily, the pipistrelle has a unique biological mechanism that allows it to compensate for its intense energy use: torpor.
They're fueling that flight on the wing by eating while they're going. And when they land, they need to compensate for all of the energy that they've used, so they slow everything down on purpose, and then they go into torpor. When bats are torpid or sleeping, their heart rate slows down a lot, and their heart beats only 3 times every minute.
When the bat is in torpor, it uses only the tiniest amount of energy. Despite the high energy needed to fly, the bat is incredibly acrobatic. The secret lies in the bat's wing structure.
This bone here is the same as your forearm bone. This is their thumb. This is the pinky finger. This is the next finger. And then the top 2 fingers are together. And you can see that in between, you have a mixture of blood vessels and muscles that enable the bat to then maneuver their wings when they're flying. So unlike a bird that generally tends to go up and down, Bats have much more maneuverability. They have to be that maneuverable because they need to catch insects while they're flying.
By alternating between resting in torpor and acrobatic flight, Nathusius'S pipistrelles can accomplish the feat of flying thousands of kilometers over Europe each year. The migrants now leave the Baltic countries as they continue their journeys. In constant search for aquatic insects, they usually fly along waterways. The presence of wet zones are crucial to the success of their migration. It's been 2 weeks since these bats left Latvia, and they've now arrived in Berlin, Germany. One would expect that they would avoid this urbanized landscape. But Germany's capital is also one of the greenest cities in Europe. The many green spaces are a welcoming rest stop for the bats. One of their favorite spots is Tier Park, the zoo in East Berlin. It's the largest animal park in Europe. 160 hectares of forest, prairies, and canals in the very center of the city. At dusk, once the visitors have left and the gates have been closed behind them, the animals in the park finally enjoy some peace and quiet. For the pipistrelles, it's time to hunt. Christian Voigt is particularly interested in bats that stop in urban settings because they have to deal with something they really hate: artificial light.
We're at the zoo in East Berlin. It's a magnificent place in the center of the city, which I personally find fascinating because it has very little light. Bats like darkness. That's why there are multiple bat species here. They have adapted to these nocturnal nests. They clearly avoid daylight because that's when they are most at risk from predators like birds of prey or owls. The cover of night is like a safety net, while it's incredibly dangerous for them to fly at dawn. For the sake of our city's biodiversity, it's really important that we preserve dark spaces such as this one. That means natural parks, zoos, but also cemeteries. We have to avoid installing lights just to please the public. We must also think about the many nocturnal creatures that need spaces like these, and we should do our part to preserve them.
No one fully knows how artificial light impacts the bats, but some even take advantage of it.
We've now left the protected dark area and are back in the light. You can see that the animals and insects here are disoriented. They fly in circles around the light until they die. For the bats, this has both positive and negative repercussions. The negative is obvious. The insects die, and as a result, the biomass of insects as a whole gets smaller in well-lit areas. On the positive side, some species have figured out how to use this to their advantage, and they hunt insects around the lampposts. Nathusius'S pipistrelles behave kind of in the middle. Traditionally, they avoid artificial light, but occasionally we see them hunting near the lampposts.
Insects are only attracted by certain colors of light. The violet and ultraviolet wavelengths in public light fixtures are mostly responsible for the mass dying of insects. Yet there is a type of light that they find a lot less attractive.
There is a simple solution. We can replace the street lamp with an alternative light source. If we put in an LED light instead, for example, these insects would all disappear. That light is less attractive to them, but that wouldn't be great for the bats that take advantage of these lights. If there are no insects, then the bats won't come here. On the other hand, it would be beneficial for the insects in the area, and by extension, to the bats as well, because more insects means more bats.
The bats' time in the Berlin Zoo will soon come to an end. But before they begin traveling again, the pipistrelles stock up on food, hunting insects that fly over pools of water. The The presence of these wet zones on every leg of their journey is crucial for a successful migration. As soon as they have eaten enough, the pipistrelles continue their migratory journey south. 60 kilometers away from the German capital, the group stops once again to hunt near a forest pond. Specially designed nesting boxes for the bats have been hung in these trees. It's a perfect place for them to rest. But these nesting boxes are not empty. Strange sounds are coming out of them. Intrigued, the female bats investigate more closely. It is midnight. Silke Voigt-Hoyke, a bioacoustician from the Natural History Museum of Berlin, knows that something very important is taking place.
What we're hearing right now are the echolocation sounds of the female bats fluttering around this area. One of the reasons the females may have chosen this area in particular is that there might be male bats around here. They obviously attract the females. Now, that's the sound of a male bat. I hope you heard it. The male is trying to seduce the females and get them to enter his nest. This is part of his nuptial parade that he uses to indicate that he's strong and would make a good mate for them. What we believe is happening is that the males sing, and that's a sign to the females that this is a very good place for them to stop during their migratory journey. This migratory itinerary could hence be considered a love highway for the bats. Migration and reproduction are closely connected when it comes to Nathusius'S pipistrelles.
It's the first time in months that these Latvian females have seen an adult male bat. Most of them are quasi-sedentary and live in more southern zones, patiently awaiting the day the migrating females will pass through the area. The male sings languorously from within his nesting box. Although hesitant at first, the females finally respond to the call. One accepts the invitation. Then a second. And even a third. Migration is one of the only times adult males and females cross paths. Most migratory animals tend to mate during the spring, but Nathusius'S pipistrelles reproduce at the end of summer, in the middle of migration. This rendezvous is only one of many to come.
Nathusius'S pipistrelles are not a particularly monogamous species. The males try to attract as many females as possible during mating season. The females, however, only spend a few days with a male before they carry on and follow their migratory path until they reach their next harem.
For the pipistrelles, migration is much more than a long journey. It's a key moment in their reproduction. The male awaits the next female in his nest. His earlier companions have already taken flight. This is where the female bats and their male offspring part ways. The juvenile males stay with the adult male bats, while the females continue their journey. But the next leg of the trip will be perilous. One of the greatest dangers to migrating bats are wind turbines, which are only increasing in number. Christian Voigt knows that these rotating steel blades claim many migrating pipistrelles.
Oh no, we've got a collision victim here. It's a Nathusius'S pipistrelle that had an accident while migrating. These bats are commonly injured by wind turbines, which are located along their migratory route. The turbines operate at the same height that the bats are flying at. We have reliable data for Germany that shows that each wind turbine injures between 10 to 12 bats a year.
Multiply that by the total number of wind turbines, and the annual death toll reaches hundreds of thousands of bats. Numerous pipistrelles are among the casualties. This is a real threat to the species.
As you can see, this animal doesn't seem to have any visible injuries, which is quite remarkable considering how fragile their fingers and forearms are.
Then, what caused the death of these bats found beneath the wind turbines? Dr. Gudrun Wibelt from the Pathology Department of the Leibniz Institute for Zoo and Wildlife Research in Berlin wants to understand what happened.
All the bones are here. Everything's intact. The animal has no exterior injuries, but when we look at the rib cage, we can see differences in color, which seems to indicate that the rib cage is full of blood. This is most likely a barotrauma, which is obviously not something that just happens all on its own.
The barotrauma was caused by the violent drop in air pressure that takes place behind the wind turbine's blade. This drop was powerful enough to make the pulmonary veins of the creature explode, killing the animal without any contact. Pipistrelles cannot detect low pressure zones using echolocation. However, the carnage could easily be prevented.
The simple solution would be to stop running the wind turbines when the bats are in peak migration. Winds are not strong at that time anyway, because we know that bats prefer not to fly in strong winds. When the winds are stronger than 8 or 10 meters per second, the bats generally stop flying. So it would be perfectly appropriate, since wind turbines are not very efficient unless wind speeds get up to 6 or 8 meters per second. We have to come to some sort of consensus. We can simultaneously find solutions to global warming while also protecting our planet's biodiversity.
For the pipistrelles who survive the wind turbines, the journey continues. The traveling females find many shelters along the way that are carefully guarded by male bats. The network of Europe's larger rivers mostly follows a north to south axis, a pathway that scientists believe bats follow as a guide for their migration. After the Rhine and the Saône, the pipistrelles start to follow the Rhone as they approach the region's frost-free areas. Today, the Rhone is full of channels and its shores have been tamed. The wet forests that once ran along the river have almost completely disappeared. In Camargue, one of the last remaining green islands clings to the river's edge. This 2-kilometer stretch is called the Tourteulon forest. These old trees are semi-aquatic and make up a riparian forest, a rare ecosystem that's very conducive to biodiversity. Two researchers from the Chiroptera group of Provence want to know if this forest could be a favorable place for bats and specifically for Nathusius'S pipistrelles. To see if bats are present, Lorenzo Buono and Lionel Bruja installed automated sensors in some of the oldest local trees and let them run for an entire year.
The riparian forest makes up less than 2% of southern territory here, but we need this tree diversity in order to have areas that are welcoming for the bats. These trees have lots of little cavities that make great hiding places for bats, while also protecting them from the elements, like the cold, the wind, and the rain. Here's one, too.
When night falls, the bats come out of hiding. Among them are Nathusius'S pipistrelles. This study has helped better understand at what time of the year the pipistrelles are present here in Camargue.
Our study clearly indicates that from May to August, only males are present here in Camargue. Afterwards, we see that the females arrive in September. It seems that the only reason the females come here is to mate, so the province region is really only for female mating season or hibernating. Tonight we had 2 contacts with the Nathusius'S pipistrelle. This one emitted the sounds typically made by males in autumn, when they're trying to attract females for mating purposes.
For the females, one of the biggest risks of migrating is that they may not find shelter before dawn. The males scattered along their routes have carefully chosen shelters and are essential to the female's survival. Located on the edge of France's largest wetland, the Tourtoulon forest seems like an ideal place to spend winter. In the Camargue marshes, the temperature rarely drops below freezing, and insects are abundant 10 months out of 12. Yet, despite these seemingly ideal conditions, we've recently learned that some pipistrelles continue their journey even further south. A pipistrelle that was ringed in Latvia was recently found south of the Pyrenees for a record-breaking 2,225 kilometers of migration. In 2010, a Catalan scientist discovered that the females migrate as far as the Ebro Delta in southern Catalonia. This means the area where the species can be found extends 600 kilometers further south than previously known. Like the Rhone River, the mouth of the Ebro has a large, fertile delta. While some protected areas remain, 80% of the delta's surface is used for intensive rice farming. Old trees, which are natural pipistrelle nests, have rarefied. At the far end of the delta, on Buddha Island, a few proud trunks still stand tall. It's now early November, and the bats will seek shelter in the nest boxes hung in these century-old eucalyptus trees. For migrating bats, the south of Catalonia marks the end of their journey. They will still hunt for a few more weeks, mate with the local males, and then finally begin their hibernation. Here lies the incredible paradox of this species. The females travel thousands of kilometers to escape winter, but then they hibernate upon arrival at their destination. They cross all of Europe to sleep. Yet they don't actually choose the nesting spots laid by the local scientists. They go elsewhere, to an unknown location. A team of scientists led by Carlos Flaquer, the man who discovered their presence in the delta, would give anything to find out where the bats go. They've come to Buddha Island to catch a few bats for an upcoming new experiment.
There's one here. No, both. Nathusius, perfect. Perfect. Yeah.
To unravel the mystery, the team will attempt to follow 3 pipistrelles equipped with radio transmitters.
Today we want to know where these guys are going during winter days. We have to use nowadays the only technique we have, that is the radio transmitters, and follow them.
When they are handled, the pipistrelles sometimes resort to a technique they also employ to fool their predators.
He's pretending that he's dead. So, for example, a cat is doing nothing because it's strange. They are not moving and they live it. It's a strategy that bats usually do.
2 females and a male were equipped with a transmitter. It's 11 p.m. The 3 pipistrelles are released. The tracking begins.
Let's just check the females, not the other ones.
It's 3 in the morning, and the male's transmitter indicates he's returned to the island. Meanwhile, the 2 females have disappeared from the radar. The next morning, the male is finally found. He returned to his normal hiding place, a eucalyptus on Buddha Island.
It seems that they are here, maybe?
Yes, there's one. Yeah. Let me check. But here, like this.
The females have vanished without a trace. They must have left the island. The scientists scan the entire delta in vain. In the late afternoon, Carlos and Maria detect a brief, weak signal near the edge of the delta, but it quickly fades. The team knows they won't find the pipistrelles again this year. This was their 3rd attempt, and the mystery remains. The closest wetlands are some 200 kilometers to the south, but no Nathusius'S pipistrelles have ever been observed there. So where are they? Are they hiding in some of the many abandoned buildings found along the edges of the river? Carlos Clair believes it's the most likely explanation. Wherever they have found refuge, the pipistrelles will adopt the only strategy that allows them to survive both the cold and the lack of food: hibernation. Soon, the insects in the delta will all but disappear. The bat's only option is to slow down its metabolism and enter a state of extreme lethargy. All of the creature's biological functions will slow down, as the pipistrelles hibernate for almost 4 months. In early April, the delta awakes. The swollen Ebro River floods the shores again. The marshes are full of water once more, and the midges and mosquitoes are metamorphosing. Millions of larvae hatch at the same time. This is the pipistrelles' cue to wake up. It's time to emerge from their torpor. Dusk becomes the backdrop of an aerial procession where thousands of starving bats feast on aquatic insects. It's time for Carlos Clair and Maria Mas to see if their female bats have returned to the island.
It's a female.
Although the gestation period of pipistrelles only lasts 2 months, none of the females have given birth yet.
They can preserve the sperma and decide herself when they can fecundate and begin the gestation. They are able to adjust their cycle, their phenology to the weather.
Capable of stocking spermatozoa for up to 8 months, the females decide when is the best time for gestation to begin. That moment is now, when food sources are abundant. But the females will not give birth to their young in Catalonia. They will do so once they have returned to Northern Europe. The countdown has begun. The bats took 3 months to get to their current destination, but they'll need to be much faster on the way back. In early May, after only a month and a half of traveling, the Pipistrelles from the Church of Apsu have returned. A few weeks later, they finally give birth to their young. When they are born, the baby bats are completely blind, bald, and incapable of flying. They spend their days clinging to their mother, absorbing her body heat and drinking her milk. For Gunnars Petersons, the return of the migrating bats is his chance to check on the colony's overall health.
Usually they have twins, and during migration they mate with several males. So it's quite normal that one baby has one father, another one another father. It's good that there is exchange of genes, and during migration they meet partners which are not related to them, coming from other populations.
Twice a year, this minuscule bat discreetly flies over the European continent. For Nathusius'S pipistrelles, migration isn't just a way to escape the winter cold. It's also a crucial period in the creature's biological cycle. Only the strongest bats will survive the perilous journey. The mortality rate among the juveniles seems rather high this year, but the rest of the colony appears to be in good health. And that's not the only positive news for Gunnars. He's just received a letter from France.
Oh, great. Madame Lamberti Daniel, I can't read in French address properly. So it's a ringed bat with number Latvia Riga SA 7925. From this I know that it's ringed by us, and we ring only during migration in Pape. And bat is killed by my cat. Please find this ring. Found on a bat killed by my cat. Yeah, it's one more case when bat is killed by cat. If I walk, then I can choose more direct way, but probably not so direct as bats can. And then I have to cover 1,955 kilometers. Was the question how long would take it for one bat, and we have one comparable flight from Pape. This bat flew this distance in 29 nights.
This record-breaking bat achieved a significant feat. It flew from Latvia and traveled some 66 kilometers per night for almost a month, proof of this species' incredible endurance. In the tower of the Church of Apsu, the baby bats are now covered in thick fur. Still feeding on motherly milk, these juveniles form social bonds through play, like all young mammals do. In a few weeks' time, the bravest ones will jump out over the edge to take their first flight. Clumsy at first, they won't venture far from the bell tower, but they will quickly gain confidence and eventually become fully autonomous. That's when they'll accompany their mothers on their great journey across Europe.